Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our College Financial Aid Night. We're joined again this year by our wonderful presenter from last year, Mr. Ed Zamora. Ed is working through Principia Prep, his company here, and I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit more about that. But Ed has over 22 years of experience in college financial aid. He's very, very knowledgeable, quite the expert in the field. We're really excited and really pleased to have him join us again and lead you through a presentation on college financial aid, and then at the end of the presentation to take some of your questions as they relate to this year, but then also for the parents of underclassmen in this presentation to talk a little bit about what that looks like for juniors and sophomores as well. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Ed. Ed, thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
All right, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Let me see, can everyone hear me? I think we should be able to have video now and everything up and running. Here we go. All right, perfect. All right, guys. Once again, I'm Ed Zamora from my kitchen, essentially, the world of Zoom nowadays, good, bad, or indifferent. Today we're going to be going over understanding the college process from essentially the 2020 environment we all find ourselves in. Now, if you have questions throughout the presentation, just ask in the Q&A. It's the easiest way to get the questions asked by me or answered by me, essentially. I'll be going through the Q&A as I'm going through the slides. So if you guys have questions, just ask away. I'll just answer everything going forward. I'm also recording today's presentation, so I will make this available for you guys, whoever wants the slides, whoever needs the slides, I guess. Now, in today's presentation, we're basically going to be talking about the entire landscape from admissions as well as a financial aid point of view, mostly on the financial aid point of view, but we're going to show you guys how the admissions world and the financial aid world have kind of like now collided, I guess, together based on everything that's going on in the world, not just with COVID, but just over the last couple of years, how the two have kind of meshed to be almost one and the same as far as admissions and financial aid. We're also going to discuss the SATs and ACTs, as well as how building a college list affects not just the admissions side, but also the financial aid side, as well as appealing colleges, asking for more aid, especially if you had any kind of income situations where you've gone from full-time work to part-time work or been furloughed, or if you lost your job. We'll be talking about all those topics. We're also going to be talking about divorce, separation, being remarried in the world of financial aid, how it affects you, as well as we're going to talk about having multiple students in school at the same time, as well as the different financial aid forms, the scams and different frauds out there that hopefully you guys can avoid, as well as student loans and other resources out there for you guys to utilize. Now, Matt and I guess I've been helping out the college here, or the high school here for a little while, but most of the guidance offices, I know Matt has asked me about this before, has asked us to videotape the presentation so we can basically just put it on YouTube so then everyone can watch just going forward. Now, we actually set up a YouTube channel, I want to say about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago now, just to basically allow parents to have questions. I just make videos now because my wife ran at home, and my wife just basically said, just make the videos already because everyone's been asking for years. So I have videos on here about everything, about the work-study programs, about how the student loans work, about the community colleges, so obviously CUNYs. We also talk about scholarships on here, finding grant money. I talk about the different federal loans. I talk about pretty much everything on the channel. So if you follow us on YouTube, I guess you go on YouTube and just watch, you can basically watch or see essentially all the different videos we have on there. Just go on YouTube and just type in Ed Zamora. It's the easiest way to find all our videos. Even to find this one, we're going to have uploaded probably either today or tomorrow after I have a minute to kind of cut out the beginning part, which is basically recording me walking around my kitchen kind of scenario. That being said, I do see a couple of you guys raising your hands. If you have questions, just jump onto the Q&A. I can read your questions as I'm going through the slides, so I'm able to answer them all the way through. So just ask your questions in the Q&A, and the chat is really just for the guidance and myself. So ask the questions in the Q&A section, not the chat, because I typically don't look at the chat throughout the presentation, but I see your questions popping up as I'm going through the presentation in the Q&A. That being said, one of the biggest questions that almost every family's asked, and I work with about 80 high schools, so I get often at the same questions over and over again. One of the biggest questions is, how do we fall into the mix of everything going on as far as being senior students or junior students in the world of, in high school looking to go off to college? And the reality is there's basically 3 different types of students right now. The first type of student is the worst, which is a student who just graduated, because they're graduating into an unfortunately very high unemployment rate. That's number one issue. The second issue is most of these students who are graduated this May or this June, one of the biggest issues, or even graduating now in December, if they took an extra semester or are graduating mid-year, is that they're going to have to start repaying back their loans in December, unfortunately, the students who graduated back in May. So their grace periods, the extra forbearance provided to them so they don't have to pay their loans by the federal government, all that's gone after December. So there might not be jobs in place, but you still have to pay back your loans. That's what makes them the worst case scenario. The second worst case of students, as far as the student bodies out there, are the students going back to college. Unfortunately, they're going back to an environment they've never been used to, whether it be going virtual only. It could be a situation where they weren't on campus and now they're being forced to go either hybrid or being forced to get off campus entirely, like a Notre Dame, a Chapel Hill scenario, unfortunately. So these students are in the second worst boat because college is never going to be the same for them this year. It's just almost impossible between the quarantining, between not having guests on campus, between not being allowed to leave campus in some cases. It's very difficult for them. So the third group is you guys on here tonight, the parents watching tonight, the seniors and juniors and so on and so forth. You guys are technically in like the best case scenario for a few reasons. Number one, they've eliminated the barrier of entry for a lot of students, i.e. the SATs and ACTs. So a lot of students that took very hard courses, IB tracks, the AP stuff, the college dual credit courses, the honors courses, so on and so forth. A lot of these students, in some cases, many of them, unfortunately, were not able to score well on tests. They either had text anxiety or just could not score well on tests for whatever reason. That's now been eliminated from almost every college from Harvard down. So then now that's kind of out of the mix already, which is a huge benefit for them. Another big benefit is if you're looking at more competitive colleges, it's very likely that this year is going to see a vast drop in international students as far as applying to the domestic U.S., which means it's going to take away a lot of competition that would have been there before, pre-COVID, obviously. And then on top of that, if you are considering an early decision or restricted early action scenario, this might be the year where you see the least amount of competition because so many students have not seen these schools, so they're not willing to lock themselves in through early decision for a college they've never seen before. So there aren't a lot of benefits that many families are not considering, many families are not looking at. Also, this is probably the one year, this is definitely the one year, where the CUNY system as well as the SUNY systems and other community colleges basically across the United States have all seen a massive increase in students going into college through CUNYs and so on and so forth because of the fact that most parents, or a lot of parents, don't want to pay $40,000, $50,000 in tuition to have their students sitting in the living room on an iPad. So there's a lot of benefits here that helps families. I'm going to go through all of them as well as different resources out there for you guys. But first, let's talk about the first question I get on the admissions side for basically the last 10 years now. And for those watching on the screen here, I have a snapshot of the Common Application. And the one question I'm always asked about on the Common App is always the same. It's the question asking about financial aid. Now, if your student's filling out the financial aid form, if your student's filling out the Common Application, which is the form in front of you here, which is used by many colleges to essentially allow them to fill out one application, send it out to a bunch of different colleges. So you only fill out one, it goes a bunch of different places. One of the questions they ask on here now, and that's a standard question, by the way. It was not standard before, but now it is. The question is, if you look at the bottom of the list of this slide here, I actually highlighted the question. It's asked by every college, by the way. The question highlighted says, do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? Now, obviously, many families want to know, why is the admissions form, the admissions office, asking us if we're applying for need-based financial assistance? Typically, when they asked you this question in the past, it basically meant that this was one of the criteria, one of the components they looked at as an admissions yes or no scenario. So it was just as much in some cases as the essay, the recommendations, the resume. It held that much weight in some colleges. Now, since it's a standard question for everyone now, no one really knows which colleges are asking it because they want to know for admissions point of view, and which colleges are just asking it because it's a standard question on the form. So if you want to know, is your college looking at you, financially speaking, as one of the criteria for admissions, very simple thing you do. Number one, you call up the admissions office and you ask them, is your school need aware? Basically what used to be known as need blind, by the way, if you're wondering. Need aware, essentially you're asking the school, are you looking at us from a financial consideration? If we check this box off, is that going to be part of the admissions criteria? Now, if the college admissions office says no, they're not, that means they don't care if you can afford it or not, by the way. And many colleges do not care if you can afford the college or not. Many schools, in many cases, are very generous. They have the endowments. They don't care if you can afford the entire college cost or not. Now, if you're wondering, should we check off this box or not check off this box? For me, it's a very simple answer. If you need financial aid assistance, if you're on this call here because you're looking for assistance to help pay for the college cost, then yes, check off the box as long as you've done the homework. And I'm going to go through the different homework assignments tonight of how you figure out, number one, if the college is generous, and also number two, how much they expect you to pay towards the cost of your education. So if you fill out all the forms, if you do all the calculations I'll give you, as far as all the different websites I give you, and you find out that you're not eligible for financial need, then yes, you can click here that you're not applying for need-based aid. But if you need financial assistance and you find out from the calculators and the websites I give you that you are financial aid eligible, then yes, I would definitely check the box indicating we're looking for financial assistance. That being said, let's talk about building the college list. Now, from an admissions point of view, the list is really three criteria. You have the reach colleges, which are like the dream colleges, the more difficult schools to get into, the ones that typically students are stretching for, reaching for essentially. So those are the ones that usually need a little bit more help. The second level of schools are the target schools, what I like to call kind of like the 50-50 schools, as far as you have a decent chance of getting in, but it's not guaranteed. And at the bottom of most lists, you have the safety schools. Now, the safety schools, from an admissions point of view, basically mean you're guaranteed in. It'd be almost impossible you not to get accepted to the college. Now, that's the admissions way of looking at a college list. The financial aid way of looking at a college list is kind of upside down, in the sense that the key factor here in most cases is the safety schools. And this is why the safety schools is the key in most college lists when it comes to gaining and basically garnering financial assistance. Right off the bat, since most safety schools want your student to go there because your student is a very competitive student for them to bring in, academically speaking, obviously, then many safety schools will look to offer your student scholarship funding. Since they're looking to offer you scholarship funding, these are the schools you want to use as leverage. So the safety schools you want to use as leverage for their scholarship money to try to get more money out of the target and reach colleges. That's the key to consider when it comes to safety schools, because many students do not end up going to their safety schools, which means you should be looking at the safety schools from two perspectives. Number one, if nothing else works, we have a backup. That's the first way to look at a safety school. Number two, utilizing this school's scholarship help to try to leverage other schools to give you more. So one of the first things you have to do is, once you have your whole college list put together, you want to select the safety schools. You can even do this with target and reach schools as well. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm calling the school's admissions offices and I'm asking them, do you offer scholarship money? Do you offer also what's known as merit aid? So merit aid and scholarships are basically the same terminology. They mean the same exact thing. If the school says to you, yes, we do offer scholarship money over the phone, I would then ask to speak to an admissions representative. I would then talk to the admissions representative, and most of the time it'll be either over the phone or a Zoom meeting like this. Now they're all doing Zoom as well. And I would ask the person, we have a student who has, let's say, a 3.5 GPA out of a 4 scale. We have a student who's taken 4 or 5 APs or is on the IB track. You can basically have a conversation with them in basically indicating, this is where my student is academically. And then if you did have the opportunity, if you're lucky enough, I guess, to have taken the SATs, you can even say to them, this is our SAT score. What they typically do at most colleges when it comes to scholarship money, they take the student's GPA and test scores and align them, and that gives you a scholarship. Now, since a lot of students are not going to be sending test scores in, you have to check with the college and see, do they need the scores or not for scholarship consideration? If they don't, which many schools are not using it nowadays, thankfully, because of the pandemic and everything else, then it's mostly just your academic track, the classes you're taking, and your GPA, which will make you eligible for scholarship money. I will then take that money once again and use it as leverage for everybody else. That's the key component to think about safety schools. Easy ins and money to leverage later on. Now, when it comes to, I guess, the cost of the colleges, one of the biggest factors, one of the biggest, I guess, unfortunate scenarios that I see going on over the last 6-7 years is that more and more students than ever before are taking longer than 4 years to graduate 4-year programs. In fact, many students now are actually taking 5, in some cases 6 years to graduate 4-year programs. And the biggest problem with that is, in the world of college, there's no such thing as a 5-year scholarship for a 4-year program. There's no such thing as a 6-year grant for a 4-year program. So your goal to minimize cost is to kind of get off the beaten track, because nowadays it's been statistically proven that anywhere between 30 to 50% of students are taking longer than the 4-year time frame to graduate 4-year colleges. And the main reason is because of this chart right here, which I'm going to go over now. But the first thing you should write down, probably the most important thing, is your student needs to accomplish 120 plus college credits to graduate a 4-year program. That doesn't matter if it's business, doesn't matter if it's philosophy, doesn't matter if it's humanities, none of that stuff matters. You typically need 120 plus credits to graduate with a bachelor's degree. Arts and science, doesn't matter and stuff. It's just 120 plus is your goal. Now, line number 2 is where the issue has become prevalent. And this is why it's taking so much longer for students to graduate. Now, what many families don't realize is when your student goes off to college, for that fall and spring semester, those 2 terms in the year, fall and spring, you guys are paying the same exact tuition bill, the same cost, whether your student takes 12 to 18 college credits each semester. So you can write that down. We're paying the same cost if we send our student off to a traditional fall, spring semester college, same bill, whether they take 12 to 18 college credits within the semester. Now the problem becomes, most colleges are going to start your student off with 12, which is the bare minimum of full-time status. Now the problem isn't that they're starting them off at the bare minimum. They're not doing this to keep them there longer. They're doing this to ease them into the college process, not overwhelm them. The problem becomes line number 2, when the student keeps taking 12 college credits each semester. Because if you look at the end of line 2, student that does this at the end of 4 years only has 96 college credits. They've essentially added an entire year to the process, i.e. more loans or more out-of-pocket money. This is why students are graduating with so much more debt than ever before, because they're going into that 4.5 year, that 5th year, that 6th year, and there's no help. So the debts are just piling up on top of what's already there. Line number 3 is what you want to get accomplished throughout this whole process. Line number 3 basically means your student averages 15 college credits per semester. If they average 15 college credits at the end of 4 years, they have 120 credits. They're in line to graduate on time. That is your goal. So how do you make sure line 3 happens? Very simple. Every college has what's known as a FERPA form, F-E-R-P-A. The FERPA form, F-E-R-P-A, there's 2 of them, by the way, one at the high school and there's one at the college level. The FERPA form you fill out after your student has deposited at a college, so not beforehand. So you don't do the FERPA form for every school. So once you deposit it and once you know where they're going, then you have the student fill out the FERPA form, which basically means they put your name on their account, allowing them access to you with everything. If your name's on the FERPA, you can call the school and ask basically any question you want about the billing, about financial aid, also about academics. Now, the reason the college tells you guys the billing amount if you call, whether the FERPA is on file or not, is as a courtesy. Legally, they're not supposed to give you any information about the student if your name's not on the FERPA. So the billing is not really an issue. It's the third criteria, the academics. Because if your name's on the FERPA form, you can call up their academic advisor at the college and ask them, what's my student's GPA at any point in time? How many credits do they have at any point in time? How many credits are they taking next semester? You can even ask this individual, is my student going to class? Because you keep track of this for financial aid purposes. So you literally never have to ask your student a single question about what's going on in the college, academically speaking, and you will know everything as long as you're on the FERPA. It's a very important form to get filled out, not so much to be like the helicopter parent type scenario, but really because of the fact that most students do not realize the actual magnitude, the value of $50, $60, $70, or $80,000 a year scenario. That's why as parents, you want to have access to this information throughout the process. Now let's talk about SATs and ACTs. When it comes to basically the entire environment that everyone's seen, that pretty much the SAT, ACT optional scenario kind of exploded this year. Now the interesting thing is before March, there was just over 1,000 SAT, ACT colleges. Now there's 1,600. So it was a huge increase, 60% increase. But it's not like we went from like 100 SAT optional schools to 1,600. So there was already a lot of them on there already. On the list already was BU, Wake Forest, George Washington, American, name brand schools were already on here to begin with. So before everyone else jumped on board, you had top tier schools that were SAT, ACT optional. Now, for senior parents looking for SAT, ACT optional schools, this is the website to go. This website here at the bottom of the website here, or I guess the bottom of the slide here, sorry, is the actual link you can go to. Basically, you just write it down, fairtest.org/university/optional. And on here, that specific link, if you go a little bit further down on the slide here, you'll see it's going to show you every single SAT, ACT optional college. You can filter it out by name, or you can filter it out by state. It's very easy to use. Now, for senior parents, first question I'm going to be asking, calling the admissions office, by the way, when I'm doing this, is if we're going to go SAT, ACT optional, is your college going to use this against us, or they're not going to use this against us for scholarship consideration? So if we don't send test scores in, are we not going to be eligible for scholarship money? Or are we going to be eligible and you guys don't care? The reason you're calling this the admissions office, by the way, for all scholarship questions is because in the world of college, what many families don't realize is the admissions office handles all scholarships. The financial aid office handles all grant money. They're both part of financial aid, but admissions handles all scholarships and the financial aid office handles all grant money. So that's why you're calling the admissions office and asking them, if we're not sending test scores in, will this be used against us, yes or no? It's a very important question to ask for pretty much every school your student's considering. Now, before this whole pandemic started, or I guess took hold in March, the reality is 9 out of 10 colleges did not care, for scholarship consideration if you sent the test scores in or not. They didn't care. Now that number is probably going to drop down to maybe like 7 or 8 out of 10 colleges will not care because there's so many colleges that jumped on at the same time. For junior parents, what I would be doing right now is building my college list, kind of like a pre-game building the list of schools you may be interested in going to apply to or visit later on as part of the student's or college list itself. As juniors, I'd be on here as well, and I'd be calling all the colleges my students interested in and asking them, will you consider or will you continue to be SAT, ACT optional for the 22-23 class? Or basically the junior class, essentially going off to college? That's the question I want to ask. And if they say yes, I would ask them the same question. Will you use this against us for scholarship consideration? Now, it's highly unlikely that Harvard, Stanford, this level of schools, Notre Dame, Cornell, will stay SAT, ACT optional. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. Once again, Wake Forest is SAT, ACT optional before this all started. GW, BU went before this all started. So it's not out of the realm that more schools at that level or even higher elect to go SAT, ACT optional going forward for a few more years. The University System of California, the biggest university system in the world, basically said they're not going to use SATs or ACTs ever again. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, that being said, I see a couple of you guys asking questions specifically about about cost and everything else. So we're on a slide here. I'm going to talk about these 2 slides first. Then I'm going to address the 2 questions here about the cost. When it comes to the cost of universities, nationwide, the average public university, i.e. a SUNY, basically you're looking at a cost of $14,000 to $30,000. Unfortunately, that's the nationwide average. The tri-state area we live in, the cost is a lot higher. Typically, you're looking at costs roughly around the $18,000 to $40,000 plus range. Then you have the private colleges, the Paces, the Fordham, and so on and so forth. These colleges, you're looking at essentially costs that are also higher than national average at somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 plus. Then the elite colleges, the higher tier schools, so on and so forth, like the Columbias, like the Cornells, like the Harvards, etc. Now you're looking at cost of schools that basically are the new norm is $70,000 plus. Now we actually put on a bunch of different schools on here just to show you guys the cost factors, or I guess what a college in nowadays, the higher tier schools, the private universities cost, all in room, board, books, the whole thing, getting them on campus, leaving them, and everything else, what it all costs for 1 year. As you can see here, Columbia is actually almost $83,000 just for 1 academic year. That being said, for senior parents, there's going to be one more increase because they increased the bill, or they increased the cost, in May, which means for junior parents, there'll be 2 increases for you guys for this cost, which means junior parents, you'll be the first group of high school students essentially to see universities that cost over $90,000 a year or not, believe it or not. That being said, one of the biggest factors, one of the biggest mistakes I see, and this is number 1 mistake every year from the admissions side, 23 years of doing this, is always the same. Parents or students look at the price tag and think they can't afford the college, so they take it off the list. That's not the way you do this. Yes, the price tags are insane. Yes, most of these colleges are way overpriced. However, every college you see on this list here, half the students that attend these colleges pay less than half the sticker price. So the reality is you have to first do the homework before you would like to take a college off the list. That's what you need to do. And let's start talking about the homework in a second. Let me just address the questions that just popped up. I know you guys can't see the questions, so I'm going to read the questions and I'm going to answer the question for you guys. Good question. How about the increase of kids 2020 taking gap years this year? How will it affect the admissions class of 2021? So essentially, the students are taking a gap year this year, 2021, this year right now, the students taking gap years. How is it going to affect the seniors this year applying for next year? And the reality is, it's not going to have that big of an effect, to be honest with you. And this is what I mean by it's not going to have that big of an effect. Many of these colleges have anywhere from 25, 50, 100, depending on the size of the college, obviously it differs, but 150 students deferring or taking a gap year type scenario. And that might seem like a lot, but it's not for this reason. There is no such thing as any school that has 100% retention rate. You can even look up your school's retention rate. Retention rate basically means the college, how many students go there as a freshman and then stay and come back as a sophomore. Now, since no college has 100% retention rate, just assume if a college has 100, 150, 200 students that are doing a deferral or a gap year, those students coming back in from the deferral will basically take the spots of the students that are leaving that would have left anyway, statistically speaking. Also, on top of that, you also have a very small, at least for some colleges, not a lot of colleges here domestically speaking, a lot of international students are not looking to come to the domestic US based on the COVID situation we have going on. I know this for certain because I have family members in Germany, I have family members in Colombia, I have family members in Sweden, and they're all saying the same thing, and you can only imagine what they're saying. So that being said, for the higher level schools, I don't want to say the elimination of international students because it's not an elimination, but between the retention rate, students not coming back, the typical, which usually happens for most colleges, no colleges keep all 100% of students that start freshman year, between that student leaving already, as well as a lack of international students, it's highly likely that the deferred students will have a very small impact, to be honest with you, the ones that are deferring for the class that we're dealing with right now, for the seniors right now, the 2021 graduating class. Okay, let me read the next question, guys. Good question. The question is, what happens if, well, let me phrase the question this way because the question is very long. Would a target or reach college utilize a safety school's scholarship money as leverage, as even a conversation piece? And let me address it this way. There will be some colleges that say to you, you know, and I'm an alumni of Fairleigh Dickinson, the university you just saw before, will say to you, you know, if you get a scholarship from Fairleigh Dickinson and we don't give you one and you want a scholarship, you know, have a good time at Fairleigh Dickinson's kind of their conversation, which is going to happen to some of the colleges, not all of them. But I answer the question this way. About 6 years ago, I had a student that was helping out, and the family had done early decision to Fordham. One of the schools we showed you was very expensive. The son actually got early decision acceptance into Fordham, so he was already into Fordham. Fordham gave them no scholarship money at all, nothing. Now, we elected to basically, we're not supposed to do this, but we elected to just send out a flyer, kind of, you know, let's see what happens, send an application into Fairleigh Dickinson. Now, Fairleigh Dickinson came back, and at the time I was working there as one of the directors, so I knew they were going to come back instantly because the student was way higher than the Fairleigh Dickinson requirement for a student. They came back and provided the student a $20,000 scholarship, which was at the time the top scholarship for Fairleigh Dickinson. We then wrote a 2-paragraph, very easy to the point. We want to go to Fordham. Fordham's a top choice. We love the school, so on and so forth. But we want to make you aware, Fairleigh Dickinson is offering us a $20,000 scholarship. I didn't think it was going to work at all, to be honest with you. And I've been doing this 23 years. I didn't think it was going to work, but I figured let's give it a shot. Within 48 hours, basically less than 2 days, Fordham came back and said, we will match the scholarship from Fairleigh Dickinson. So while there will be some schools that will not match based on a certain tier requirement, there are going to be other colleges that do. And for me, based on the pandemic and everything else going on with the colleges, number one, not making their numbers. A lot of colleges, Newsweek just came out last week and said a lot of colleges are not making their admissions numbers. That's why they're all pushing forward their early action deadlines, early decision deadlines, because they want more applications. For me, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a safety school can be utilized to try to get more money out of a target or reach school. It's not going to happen once again with every college, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. That being said, let's go back to the slides. Let's talk about the first thing that pretty much every family, unfortunately, gets incorrect or doesn't understand properly. Let me put it that way. In the world of college, when you're using the term financial aid, what you need to understand is, from a family point of view, and I'm talking about this as being a director and also working with families. As a family, when you hear the term financial aid, you typically think free money, scholarships, and grants. In reality, from a college point of view, the term financial aid means four things. It means scholarships and grants, as well as loans and work programs. So what you need to do if you're talking to an admissions officer, a financial aid officer, or anyone from the college, and you guys start talking about the financial aid components, the first thing you want to say and make sure they understand is, I want to talk about financial aid, but first thing I want you to understand, or in this discussion, I want to make sure we're on the same page. I only want to talk about the gift aid portion. Gift aid is the actual financial aid term for free money. Gift aid means only scholarships and grants. So if you say I want to talk about gift aid only, they can't talk about financial aid and in their mind be thinking loans or work programs. They can't do that. So going forward, when you're talking to anyone from the college about financial aid specifically, you want to make sure that you're both on the same page by saying I want to talk about only the gift aid portion. That being said, let's talk about how you qualify for grant money to begin with. On the slide here, you see the actual breakdown of how every college, from CUNY all the way to Harvard and everybody in between, how they select or how they basically figure out if you're eligible for financial aid consideration, i.e. do you even have space available, need for grant money. Now the first part is called cost of attendance. Everyone should write down the term cost of attendance. It's very important. And every time I tell you guys write it down, it means it's very important. Cost of attendance means what the college costs, everything included for one academic year for one student. You subtract out what's known as the expected family contribution. This number is gotten from filling out the financial aid forms. So you subtract out what they think you are able to pay towards the cost of college from the total cost of the university. What's left over is the financial need. Now the financial need is essentially what that college is able to assist you with in the form of grants, scholarships, loans, or work programs. Now the reason I say should or could be able to help you out is because there's no guideline, there's no rule at all saying they have to help you out whatsoever. I'm going to go through this presentation tonight and show you two specific ways to find out if your colleges are generous or not. Basically more homework for you guys to do. First, let's talk about what's cost of attendance. When it comes to cost of attendance, it means everything. Cost of attendance means tuition, room and board, books, transportation, new student fee, technology fee, lab fees, parking fees. All these fees, everything involved goes into the cost of attendance. Two reasons why you will be using the term cost of attendance going forward. Number one, you want to know what the whole school cost is. Now, yes, the tuition cost, the room and board cost, those are the two biggest factors. But those aren't the only factors in the cost of a college. So I want to know the cost of attendance. By law, by the way, the school must provide you with the cost of attendance. Second reason you want to use the term cost of attendance moving forward is because if you're negotiating, if you're appealing, if you're asking for more assistance from the college, you want to use the bigger college costs, which includes all the components. You don't want to be arguing for more money, just talking about the tuition cost or tuition and room and board. That being said, how do they come up with your expected family contribution? How do they know specifically how much you should be paying for college? Very simple. The two forms you see down here are the two first starting forms you'll be filling out to start obtaining financial aid assistance. The form on the left is called the FAFSA form. Everyone fills out the FAFSA form. I have a video, it's about 6 or 7 minutes long. There's about 7 reasons why everyone fills out the form. No matter what your accountant says, no matter what the financial planner says, no matter what the college advisor said, you fill out the FAFSA no matter what. Okay? Now, the CSS profile on the form on the right, not everyone fills this form out. It's not a requirement. The FAFSA is not a requirement, but for me, I always tell parents, fill it out no matter what. Now, when it comes to the FAFSA form, it takes about 45 minutes. It doesn't take that long. But the CSS profile form is not required by all colleges. All colleges, however, do require the FAFSA form. And I'm going to go through a bunch of different reasons why you fill it out as I go through the slides. But once again, I have a video. It's 7 minutes long. It explains every single reason why you fill it out. In 23 years of doing this, working at different colleges as a financial aid officer, as a director, and so on and so forth, In 23 years, I've probably easily met 150, maybe 200,000 families in my career. I have told maybe 7 or 8 families, not to do the FAFSA for very unique, specific reasons. And it was only for 1 year. So almost every family, and I'm talking about families on Social Security, disability, I've seen negative incomes of $1 million on a tax return, all the way up into incomes in the millions and millions of dollars. I've had all those people and told them, fill out the FAFSA form. So you fill it out no matter what. Now the FAFSA form is filled out here on this website here, as you can see at the bottom of your slide there. It's www.fasfa.ed.gov. Now when it comes to the FAFSA form, this is only filled out by senior parents this year. So senior parents, this form became available starting October 1st. So your time frame, I guess let's put it in a calendar perspective as far as deadlines. For students or for families filling out the FAFSA, your goal is to fill out the FAFSA between October 1st and January 1st if you're doing regular or rolling. If you're doing early action 1, early action 2, restricted early action, your deadline is between October 1st and November 15th. And this is the first time I've ever said that, by the way, in 23 years, that the early action stuff has been moved up. And then the third group of students looking to fill out the financial aid forms, the early decision students, early decision 1 students, you guys have to have your FAFSA filled out by the deadline of the early decision for admissions. So that's typically November 1st for many of you. Now, the reason I said this is the first time I've ever said that early action deadlines have to be in by November 15th is because this has never happened. This is the first year I have ever seen colleges are moving up their deadlines for financial aid forms while moving forward their deadlines for admissions paperwork. Now they're moving forward their deadlines for admissions paperwork to get more applications, i.e., I don't know what you want to call it, more fees, more competition, etc. They're moving back the deadlines for financial aid, in my opinion, so if students miss the deadlines, they have an out not to provide you as much financial need that you have, or not to provide you as much financial aid that they have in the past. So that's the only reason they would be moving up the deadlines, because the previous deadlines for early action were around January. So they're moving up the deadlines by months, not a couple days or weeks. So that's not a good sign. So for me, it's indicating that colleges are trying to find ways not to fully fund students. That's the only reason they would be doing that. So for senior parents, ideally the goal is to get your financial aid forms done as soon as possible, even if it means sending the financial aid forms in before your students applied to college, which I never say. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because colleges are moving forward the deadlines for a reason. It's not beneficial to the families at all. I'm going to go through a couple more reasons why in a minute, but right at the bat, let's talk about the FAFSA form. Once again, you use the 2019 taxes for senior parents. So for seniors filling out this form, you're using the 2019 taxes filling out this form. You're using the 2019 taxes, by the way, to fill out all forms for senior parents tonight. Okay? Juniors and below, you guys aren't doing anything. You guys don't fill out any single forms. That being said, you're going to need for senior parents 2 FSA IDs. At the bottom of this slide here, you see the website, fsa.ed.gov. This is where you guys fill out the form. This is where you guys go to get the 2 IDs. You need 2 IDs for a reason. The first ID you create is the student's ID. The second ID you create is the parent's ID. Now, you log into the FAFSA using the student's ID. So you start the form as a student by using their ID. As you see on here, I actually have a video on YouTube, a step-by-step guide, because I was asked this so many times. I think we have like, I don't know, 7,000 views on this. It's a step-by-step guide of how to obtain the FSA IDs, both of them. The second ID, by the way, is used here. Halfway through the FAFSA, it's going to ask the parent to log in. So you log in with the first ID, the student's ID, you log in. You get halfway through the student's FAFSA form, and halfway through it, the second ID will be asked of you. So it's going to say to you at this midway point of the FAFSA, now please have the parent log in by putting their ID information in. That ID is then used to allow you as a parent to upload your taxes directly from the IRS. That's why you need the 2 IDs. One to log in, the second to upload your taxes, and at the end of the FAFSA, for both of you to be able to sign the form. That's why you need 2 IDs. Now, that being said, let's talk about what goes on the FAFSA and what doesn't go on the FAFSA. Just give me a second. I have a bunch of questions popped up for you guys here. Okay, we talked about that question as far as early action, early submission of FAFSA. Okay, we have 4 questions asking me why I fill out the FAFSA, which I'm assuming someone told you not to fill out the FAFSA. I'm assuming that person has never worked in a college. That's what I'm assuming. This is why. Every year in August, I've worked for multiple different colleges, mostly private colleges, but it's always the same thing. I'll give you an scenario why every family fills out the FAFSA. And this year with the pandemic is going to kind of bring it home. Every year in August, every college I worked for, every year without fail, myself and every other financial aid director I talk to, every financial aid officer I talk to, know that every summer, a week before school starts, a dozen people walk into our office and always say the same question. Ed, I lost my job. Ed, I lost my spouse. Ed, I went from full-time work to part-time work. I've been furloughed. I lost the unemployment. I have medical bills. You know, things that change your financial landscape. Obviously, COVID changed a lot of financial landscapes. First question, every financial aid officer, every college is going to ask you, from CUNY all the way to Harvard, the first question they're all going to ask you is, did you fill out the FAFSA form? The minute you say no, you didn't fill out the FAFSA form because the college advisor, the financial planner, the accountant, whoever, it doesn't matter anymore. The problem then is, what most families don't realize is, in the world of financial aid, there are 3 different deadlines for financial aid. There's the school deadline, which is typically February. There's the state deadline, which is typically April. And there's the federal government deadline, which is typically basically any time, really. The federal government doesn't actually have a deadline. Which means, if you come into my office in August and you've lost your job, you've already missed my deadline, you missed the state of New York's deadline, and you're basically only eligible now for federal aid. So since you didn't fill out the form, our school, as I mentioned before, many schools are moving up their deadlines to make sure that parents lose aid. Imagine being late this year. You're not going to get as much school aid as you would have gotten. You're not going to get any state aid because you totally missed the deadline. And you might get some federal aid. And this is what I mean. Let's say you fill out the form. You completely wasted 45 minutes of your life. Your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, you know, they're laughing. They said, I told you you're not going to get anything. I don't know why you listen to me. What they don't realize is, when you come to my office and say, Ed, I need financial aid help. And I say, did you fill out the FAFSA? You say, yes. The minute you fill out the FAFSA, it's time stamped. So it's in the system showing me when you filled it in. That means you didn't miss any deadlines. Not our deadline, the state deadline, or the federal government deadline. While you're in my office, I'm playing with your FAFSA. Basically, I'm asking you questions. Are you getting unemployment? Was there severance? How much are the medical bills? And what I mean by playing with your form, it means I'm actually in your FAFSA because you've already completed it, and I'm erasing incomes. I'm erasing assets. I'm taking stuff off the form. Before you leave my office, I can tell you how much federal aid you're going to get, how much school money you're going to get, our money, and how much state aid you're going to get. Now, the last thing you want to do when everything's gone to hell and everything's gone, you know, nothing's working, you lost your job, you have medical bills, etc. The last thing you want to be told is, if you filled out the form 3 or 4 months ago, you would have got tens of thousands of dollars. But now that you didn't fill out the form, you're going to receive thousands of dollars. I've literally seen this happen, where students and parents have not filled out the form because they were told by someone who more than likely has never worked in the college system not to fill out the FAFSA because they think you make too much. There is no such thing as you make too much for the FAFSA. Give me another example. By the way, I have a video, once again, it's about 7 or 8 minutes long. It has 7 different reasons why you fill out the FAFSA. If you're looking for loan help, there's 3 different types of loans: federal loans, state loans, and private loans. The federal loans and the state loans require you to fill out the FAFSA form. So if you don't fill out the FAFSA form, you cannot apply for federal loans, you cannot apply for state loans, you can only apply for private loans. So you basically eliminate 70% of your options if you don't do the FAFSA. And once again, you want to know the rest of the reasons, just watch the video online, but do the FAFSA. Unfortunately, I know it's a wasting time for some families, but do it no matter what, okay? That being said, when it comes to the FAFSA form, you're always asked, or let me talk about what you're not asked for on the FAFSA, because this is where the errors happen, by the way. On the FAFSA, the 2 biggest errors on the financial side, let's put it that way. The 2 biggest financial errors made on the FAFSA every year are always the same. Your primary home and your retirement assets, these 2 things do not go on the FAFSA form. So where you live, the equity in your home, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, whether it's, whatever it is, that equity in the house does not go anywhere on the FAFSA form. The second financial error made all the time in the FAFSA is parents putting down their 401ks or 403bs or IRAs or Roths. None of those things, life insurance, cash value, none of these things go on the FAFSA form. The value you have in these do not go on there. What does go on the FAFSA, and this is where the error happens with the retirement account, is for the retirement account, they have one question on the FAFSA. And the one question is not how much you have. the one question they ask you about your retirement for parents is, how much did you contribute the previous tax year? This is where the error happens. So let's say you have $100,000 in your 401k, and last year you put in $2,000. The FAFSA does not want to know you have $100,000, so you don't put $100 on the FAFSA. You put on the FAFSA, you put in $2,000 into the retirement account. That's all you put on there, okay? That being said, let's talk about what does go on the FAFSA. They want to know about cash, checking, savings, CDs, money markets, mutual funds, stocks, equities, everything outside of retirement is what they want to know about from an investment cash side. They also want to know, by the way, if you have a second property. So if you have a second property, they want to know the equity amount in that second property. Also, when it comes to college savings, on the college savings side, they've now basically taken all the college savings plans, the UTMAs, the UGMAs, the New Jersey Best, the New York plans, the basic 529s, everything, and basically mushed it together, and you put all of them in the parents section for the college savings accounts. You put them all in the parents section of investments, on the FAFSA specifically. Now, if your grandparent, or I guess a student's grandparent, or uncle or aunt, if they own the 529, it does not go anywhere on the FAFSA form. The beneficiary of the 529 plan is not the owner. The principal of the 529 plan is the owner. So if it's grandma, grandpa, they're the owner, it does not go on your financial aid forms because grandma and grandpa own that asset, not you. Now, if you own the asset as the parent, you're the principal, then obviously it goes in your section automatically, but that's one of those weird kind of like gray area things that's changed over the last 2 or 3 years, okay? Once again, quick little question just popped up. For the FAFSA form is only filled out by the senior parents, not juniors. So juniors, you guys aren't doing anything this year, okay? Okay, I have one other question about the FAFSA. I'm going to just address that now. Then I'm going to go back to the slide here, guys, about the expected family contribution. For the 7 or 8 reasons why the parents did not fill out the forms for that one academic year, it was mostly one-time financial gains for most families, to be honest with you. That's kind of what made it, I guess, triggered it, where they had maybe an inheritance, or they had money coming in from an insurance policy of that kind of stuff, or something coming in based on an accident, a lawsuit. Those were typically the reasons why I told the parents, for the people asking, why I told them not to do it for that 1 year, knowing that it would affect basically their financial picture with that college for every year going forward. That's the reason why, by the way. Now here in front of you, you guys see the 4 different parts of the expected family contribution. I'm gonna start from the bottom and work my way up. I'm basically gonna explain to you guys and show you the different formula and how the schools themselves look at you to pay for college from each person's point of view. Now, I might as well just give it to you now. The website to go to after the presentation, if you want to figure out your own expected family contribution number before you fill out the financial aid forms, is College Board. On College Board, you have an EFC calculator. Lets you play with the numbers. So essentially, you guys can figure out your numbers before you fill out any financial aid forms. That being said, let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Just doing the calculators online, by the way, it's easier than following me here. I just do this so you guys know how it breaks down. Right off the bat, student assets. Any money in the student's name, they want 20% of it right at the bat to go towards the cost of college. So if you put on the FAFSA form or the CSS or any financial aid form that your student has $1,000 in their checking account, right off the bat, 20% of that, or $200, will be added as part 1 of the 4-part equation. Part number 2, student income. When it comes to student income, students are allowed to make up to $6,500 before $1 counts against you. So if your student had worked for senior parents in 2019 and they made $6,000, even if you put it on the form, it's not going to matter because it's not going to count. Once you go over $6,500, every dollar over $6,500, it's 50 cents on the dollar that counts. They want to use that money to help pay for college. Part number 3, and this is where it starts getting tricky. As parents, just write this down. It's the easiest way for me to explain to you guys. As parents, you're given what's known as an asset protection allowance. It's essentially a certain amount of money that does not count towards paying towards college. Now, once again, on the FAFSA, your house does not count. Your retirement assets do not count. So let's just say that, and by the way, your asset protection amount is $25,000 roughly, okay? So let me give you an example. Let's say all the money you have in the world is $20,000. That's it. in checking and savings, maybe you have some AT&T stock, let's call it. You put that number on your investment side of the FAFSA. The FAFSA will not count any of that $20,000 to go pay for college because you're under the $25,000 of asset protection. Let's say you have $100,000 of assets outside retirement. This is the way it works. So basically you put the amount on there on the FAFSA, you put $100,000 on the FAFSA form. Then they will back out the $25,000 roughly of the parent asset protection. The $75,000 remaining will be assessed at a rate of 5.6%. Now that 5.6% obviously is a lot lower than the 20% rate they use for the students. So things you might want to do before you fill out the forms. And by the way, when you're filling out the forms, they all ask you the same question. How much do you have in cash and savings as of today, the day you fill out the form? How much do you have in investments as of today, the day you fill out the form? So it all depends on not only when you fill out the forms, but if you guys want to move some stuff around, that's perfectly fine. That being said, part number 4 of the equation. Part number 4 is parents' income. It's a sliding scale. So the more you make, the more they expect you to pay towards the cost of college. The way it works is this, because some of you are looking on there and wondering, Ed, am I paying 20% of my income, 47% of my income? And by the way, when they ask you for income numbers, they're asking for the adjusted gross income. That's the number they're looking for. Now, the easiest way to do this, or the easiest way, kind of back of the napkin equation for me to explain to you guys, is if you're making adjusted gross of $50,000 to $200,000, this range, $50,000 adjusted gross to $200,000, they're going to expect you to pay 22% of your income. So you're making $100,000, you're paying $22,000. If you're making $200,000, you're paying $44,000. Once you get to the 200 level and you go up, that's when they start increasing the amounts as far as the percentage they want from you to help pay for the college costs. You add these 4 parts together, and that gives you your expected family contribution, or essentially how much they think you should be able to pay towards the college cost. Once again, use College Board. It's the easiest way to find out your numbers. That being said, let's talk about the second thing that happens at the end of the FAFSA form. At the end of the FAFSA form, you're going to see this blue screen here, or at least halfway down the page, you're going to see this blue screen here. And the box on the left, where I have that big little arrow, that is going to ask you to fill out additional questions for these guys. The state of New York. The state of New York, the Higher Education Service Corporation, HESC, at the end of the FAFSA, there's going to be 2 blue boxes. I just showed you a moment ago. 2 blue boxes. The one on the left, you click on that box, and it's basically going to bring you here. Now, what's going to make a difference here is you can only do this the first time you fill out the FAFSA. The first time you fill out the FAFSA, every state that you reside in, if you're going to be going to a state school in that state, will ask you to fill out state-required additional questions. Now, the state of New York has about 50 to 60 additional questions and asks you at the end of the FAFSA form. I don't really count it as a separate form because it's essentially attached to the FAFSA form. So if you click on that blue box, it will automatically bring you here, but you're not going to see this home page. What you're going to see is automatically it's going to go right into asking you questions about your financial situation. Now, the questions they're going to ask you are going to come right off your New York tax return. So your state tax return, that's where the questions are going to be asking you for. That's where they're going to be asking you questions about. Now, this form here, the FAFSA and the HESC form, these 2 forms here must be completed if you're applying for state aid. Now, if you're looking to maybe do the Excelsior program, or if you're looking to get into EOF, the Education Opportunity Program, or Education Opportunity Fund, all of them require the FAFSA form and the state form to be completed. Now, the state of New York itself here does ask more questions than any other state, believe it or not. Most states only ask you 1 to 6 questions in many cases, but the state of New York also has a lot of money available to you through the TAP program, Tuition Assistance Program, where you can get grant money based on if you have enough need and you're attending a state school. And obviously through the Excelsior program, you can also go to state schools here, depending on your income level, for free in some cases. Now, one of the biggest, I guess one of the tricky parts here, and I see this question is about to pop up, and I might as well answer it now. One of the biggest issues I've seen in the last 3 months, and I've seen this from a couple different states, not just New York and New Jersey. I've seen that some of these states have actually been sending out warnings. And this is what I mean by warning. I have a warning here on this page here. Now, this is a New Jersey warning, but New York basically has the same thing. Now, the states themselves are all running out of money because of COVID, good, bad, or indifferent. Now, the state of New Jersey came out the first, that's why I have their notice, but New York's more likely right behind them because they're not making any money off the tax revenues, which they utilize for Excelsior, for TAP, for Education Opportunity Fund. All these programs that New York has are all based on the tax revenue. Now, the state of New Jersey came out with this warning, and I'm assuming New York's going to come out with it soon enough, addressing what they're going to do about Excelsior and everything else, and New York, medical school free and everything else, very soon. Now, basically what New Jersey said was, we're going to guarantee this year's class, the financial aid we've offered you guys, what we've offered you already, we're going to guarantee it. So same thing for New York, the TAP, the tuition assistance program you're getting is still being offered. But New Jersey has already come out and said, we're going to offer you the money we gave you, the money we said we're going to give to you. In the fall, for this class, 2021, we're going to pay it. In the spring, we may not pay it because we may not have it. This is why I'm telling everyone here, and also once again, the video I have, the 7-minute video about why you fill out the FAFSA no matter what, this is a warning. This is a huge warning. This is saying the states are losing money because they're spending so much money on unemployment. And anyone in education knows if the states are running low on money, the first place they always cut is education. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Excelsior may or may not be here next year based on the tax revenue New York is losing. So the number one key to make sure you're getting all your aid, do not be late with the FAFSA. Under no circumstances, no matter what anyone tells you, this year specifically, and I've been doing this 23 years, I'm seeing warning signs all over the place. Schools moving up deadlines, states coming out with warnings. This is the one year, even if you think you have the safest job in the world, fill out the FAFSA, fill out the state form, because if you miss the deadline, I guarantee you New York is not going to fund you, even if you've lost your job. So fill it out no matter what. That being said, let's talk about the second form. Some of you have to fill out, not all of you. When it comes to filling out financial aid forms, there's two main forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. The CSS profile is the college scholarship search form. It's filled out here on the College Board site. So here, you don't need 2 logins. You need 1 login, the student's login that they created for their SAT account. Here you log in, as you see, here's the home page basically. Above the young lady there, there's 6 different tabs up there. Getting started or get started, finding colleges, explore careers, and pay for college. Pay for college, if you click on that link, it's going to give you a bunch of different links. One of the first ones on there is going to show you a list, basically a link you can go to showing you every school that requires a CSS profile. Because in New York, none of the SUNYs need a CSS, but NYU needs it, Columbia needs it, Cornell needs it, Pace does not need it, Hofstra does not need it. You would know who would need it if you're staying in New York or going anywhere else. Most students like to go in the tri-state area up to Boston. And by the way, almost every college in Boston requires the CSS and the FAFSA. So if you go here and click on that, it'll show you every school that requires it. Also, if you click on Pay for College, it will also bring you another link right to the CSS profile to start filling out the form. Now, the reason I'm showing you the home page here rather than showing you the CSS portion of it is because above where it says Pay for College, there's a little box there. It says Find Colleges, Advice, and More. It's a search box. You can pop in any school's name in there, click search, and they'll give you that school's profile. This is very important. The profile is one of the 2 ways I'll show you guys tonight to find out if your colleges are generous or not. Now, what counts on CSS? Well, everything counts on CSS, by the way. And once again, the CSS, like the FAFSA, opens October 1st. Same deadlines as I gave you guys for early action, regular, rolling, and early decision, and only filled out by seniors using the 2019 taxes. The difference between the 2 forms, vast. FAFSA, 90 to 95 questions. CSS, 400 starting questions. FAFSA, you make a mistake, go back in, easy to change, up to 12 times you get to add, change, make things, adjustments, etc. CSS, submitted, it's locked, you cannot make changes now. You have to call each school and ask them, how do you want me to change the error? Some schools want you to fax them, some schools want you to email, others want you to scan stuff over. It's a pain in the butt. So take your time with both forms, especially the CSS. Also, when it comes to CSS profile, it's not free. There's a $25 charge for the first school for the CSS, and $16 extra for each school you add to the CSS that needs the form. Now, if you try to fill out the CSS for PACE, or if you try to fill it out for Marist, or basically, let's say St. John's, it stops you by page 3. So you probably answered 20 questions, because by the 25th, 26th questions, and ask you, where do you want this to go? So when you really started off the form, it'll stop you just in case you don't need to do it. So you can't do this by accident, per se. That being said, both forms have save buttons. You get overwhelmed, hit the save button, do not rush. So the worst thing you can do is rush through these forms. Another question that popped up here. Yes, the question is, do I help out with financial aid forms? And the answer is yes. I do help out with financial aid forms of parents that need the help, okay? That being said, the CSS counts everything on FAFSA as well as your home. And for your home, it's gonna ask you what year you bought it, how much you bought it for, how much you own the house, how much in the first mortgage, is there any multiple mortgages, how much you're paying monthly, and how much you think it's worth. They go super in depth with this stuff. Also with the CSS, it's gonna ask you for your retirement assets, how much you have in your retirement accounts. So it goes very in depth. If you get overwhelmed, once again, hit the save button, do not rush. That being said, let's go over here. Here is the first of the 2 ways you guys can find out if your schools are generous or not. It's called the net price calculators. And by the way, now every college pretty much has the net price calculators. So what are the net price calculators? Very simple. Think of it as the expected family calculators give you a broad number of what every college thinks you can pay. The net price calculators gives you a specific number of what you would be paying for a specific college. What you can do to find your school's net price calculator, very simple. Just go on Google and type in the name of the school and net price calculator. You can go in St. John's, net price calculator, PACE, net price calculator, Iona, net price calculator. And almost all of them now have a net price calculator. The benefit with the net price calculator is going to show you in almost every case how much grant money they're going to give you, and in some cases also how much scholarship money this school is going to give you, because once again, they use an index. So they're going to ask you for the grades and stuff to see if you're eligible for scholarship funding. These are key components to be considering if you're looking at early decision. So it's a very important thing to utilize if you're considering early decision and you're not sure, should we do ED or not? We want to know the numbers. Do the net price calculators. And the reason I have College Board on here, by the way, is because most of the net price calculators are actually on the College Board site. That being said, let me just read one quick question here. Good question. If you did not do the FAFSA form last year and you have a student going into college, if you did not do the FAFSA form and your student's in college this year, can you do the FAFSA form for next academic year? And the answer is yes. There is nothing stopping you from doing the FAFSA form their first year all the way through, or their last year, or in between. You can do the FAFSA anytime you want, and you do start from scratch every time you fill out the form, okay? That being said, let's talk about the net price calculators just to show you how they work. I actually did one here for Harvard. Just to give you an example. First thing I like about almost every net price calculator, the first thing that almost all of them do on the left, it shows you how much Harvard cost with all the breakdowns, room, board, books, etc. Now, I fill out the net price calculator for Harvard, indicating I am a family size of 4 with 1 student going off to college, parents making $100,000 with $50,000 in investments outside of retirement. It came back and said to me, based on my scenario and everything else, Harvard is going to give us over $60,000 in grants. I know it says scholarships, but Harvard doesn't do scholarships. It's just a terminology difference here. Harvard does grant money, need-based aid, which means if we attended Harvard with this scenario, our cost, your cost out of pocket would be $11,900 and change to send our student off to Harvard. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, well, Ed, that's great, but we're not all going to Harvard. So how does this help us? Very simple. Harvard is not the only school that meets this much financial need for a family of this income scenario. Case Western does this, Columbia does this, Cornell does this, Ithaca does this, Loyola does this. There are many colleges just as generous or close to as generous that provide a lot of financial assistance. So just don't think that you are doing net price calculators for the highest tier schools. There are other colleges out there, Gettysburg, Muhlenberg, every single liberal arts college basically does this as well. So there are a lot of colleges out there, they're not at the Harvard level, that provide a ridiculous amount of financial assistance. That being said, let's talk about, so let me go back, there we go. What happens when you are divorced, separated, married, remarried? Let's talk marital status now on the financial aid forms. First, let's talk FAFSA. On the FAFSA form, there are 6 answers, by the way, to marital status for the parent. 6. Answer number 1, married, remarried, same answer. Answer number 2, divorced or separated, same answer. Answer number 3, widowed. Answer number 4, not married. Answer number 5, not married but living together, which is one of the weird gray area ones. And then answer number 6, unable to provide parents financial information. If you indicate the parents are divorced or separated, another question pops up. The other question is going to ask you, who does the student live with 51% of the time or more, which is an interesting way of putting it because before it was who provides more support. That being said, if you indicate that the student lives with mom 51% of the time or more, that means all dad's questions for his income, his assets, and everything financial are erased from the form. They're never asked of you. Now, everyone always wants to know, what do they mean by separated, okay? Now, this is what I mean by separated. And by the way, this is what makes it a gray area. It's not like a loophole gray area where you're trying to hide stuff. It's just a gray area here. What makes it a gray area is you can indicate that you're separated on the FAFSA, but still file your taxes married, filing jointly, and it's perfectly fine. You don't have to change your tax status at all and still file separate on the FAFSA form. If you are filing separate on the FAFSA form and you do have taxes that are married filing jointly, they will want you guys to show at least one parent with a different address, either a lease agreement, a rental statement, a utility bill, a driver's license, something showing that person is living somewhere else. That's the way they work with the separated stuff. Now, on the FAFSA still, what happens if you're remarried? Well, unfortunately, stepmom, stepdad, if you guys are remarried, your information does go on the form. It does not matter if you've been married a day, 100 years. It does not matter if you've adopted a student or not. You still go on the form, your finances, unfortunately. That being said, when it comes to the FAFSA form, good, bad, or different, those are the criteria, and that's how it works. Let's talk CSS now. On the CSS, it's school specific. That's what makes it very difficult. On the CSS, some colleges are going to say to you, if you're divorced or separated, we do not want the non-custodial parents' information. Other schools are going to say, if you are divorced or separated, we want both parents' financial information. And if they indicate they need both parents' financial information, the difficult scenario here is that basically means that you are both filling out 400 plus questions each. And making matters worse, if you're both remarried, that means all 4 parents' finances go on the financial aid form. So in some cases, financial aid is unfortunately outside the realm of possibility, okay? Let's talk about multiple students in the school. I got a quick question. Let me just get this out of the way so I can see the question. Sorry, I had the other thing there. Let me just see one thing here. Oh, we already answered that question. Okay, good. Let me go back here. Okay. Now let's talk about what happens when you have multiple students in school at the same time. Let me just move that up, just to make it easy. There we go. So I can see the questions and everything else. Okay. When you have multiple students in school, believe it or not, it's actually like a humongous financial benefit. And this is what I mean by humongous financial benefit. Right off the bat, let's just say you have one student going off to college. We use even numbers, by the way, to make the math easy. Let's say that college costs $35,000, everything included. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms say you can pay $20,000. That means $35,000 costs, $20,000 you're paying. You have $15,000 of financial aid space for financial aid consideration. Let's say another student comes in, same year, maybe a year after. Now you have 2 students in school, and by the way, they do not need to go to the same college. That's not part of what has to happen here. So let's just say they're both going to $35,000 colleges, just to make the math easy. So $70,000 in total cost. And once again, you're asked to pay $20,000. The difference here is that number is being divided between the 2 students. Student 1, who was paying $20,000 before, is now only paying $10,000, which means they went from having $15,000 financial aid space to $25,000 financial aid space. It's created more financial aid space. I've seen families that have adjusted gross incomes of $400,000, $500,000, $500,000 of income receive tens of thousands of dollars in free financial aid grant money. So don't just assume if you make too much, you can't get aid. And definitely if you have more than one student going to college, it provides a ton of space for financial assistance. Let's talk financial errors. Financial aid errors constantly made every year. 4 top errors made every year. First name, last name, social, and birthday. When it comes to the first name, you do not use nicknames. You have to use your legal name on your social. Second error made every year from the last name. If you do not know your last name, If you do not know your student's last name, I know you're probably watching thinking, what is he talking about? How do I not know my last name? If you're remarried, did you change your name on your social security card? That's the key. If you remarried with your student, did they get adopted by the step parent? And if they did they change their name on the social security card as well? I've had parents come in my office and they don't know their last name. So I can't obviously help you out with financial aid forms if I don't know what name to put on the form. Number 3, the social. Many admissions paperwork, the Common App as well, will say to you, you do not need to put your social security number on the admissions paperwork. You do need to put your social on the paperwork for admissions because that's how the two get linked up, is the social. So always put your social on admissions paperwork. Also, check the social to make sure it's correct, because if your social is incorrect on the financial aid forms, it delays everything. And the 4th error is the birthday. If you do not know your spouse's birthday, they don't know your birthday, just double check. They'll be annoyed with you for a bit, but it's better than putting the wrong date on the form, because the two basically death nails of the financial aid forms are the birthday and the social. If you get one of these two wrong and you submit the form, it can't be changed. You have to start all over again, unfortunately. That being said, let's talk about social media landmines. Now, one of the biggest, and I talk to a lot of colleagues in admissions, and they always tell me the same thing. They're all going on Facebook. They're all going on Instagram. They're all going on Twitter, on Facebook. They're all going on everything. Anything a student has on their account, they're going on there. So I tell students and parents all the time, just make your account private until you drop the student off. Not until they get accepted. This is where a lot of people kind of screw up. You make this account private, their social media accounts private, until you drop them off at the college. This is why. Every 3 or 4 years, there's always a news article. It's always comes out always the same thing. 20 students were going to Stanford. Now 20 students not going to Stanford. 20 students were going to Harvard. They liked something. They posted something. They shared something. Now 20 students are not going to Harvard. If your student's posting something that you might think somebody finds offensive or not as funny as they find it to be funny, make their accounts private. If they don't want to make their accounts private, do not pay their phone bill. And I say that half jokingly because of all the colleagues I know, and I know some colleagues at some pretty high level colleges, they all go on the social media pages. And I'm gonna tell you right now, no matter what any admissions person says to you, if they say they're not going there, they're lying. And if they say they're going there just to see their artwork and everything else, they're lying. There's only one reason an admissions officer goes on a social media page of a teenager. That's to find a reason to reject them, because the admissions pools are so competitive. They're crazy competitive now. And this year, with students not being able to see colleges, the application pool for regular and early action is going to be like a tsunami of applications, especially with schools pushing forward or basically saying to the students, you have more time to submit applications. It's going to be crazy how many applications they have for basically the same amount of spots, which means they're going to be looking for more reasons to reject students, i.e., go on their social media pages and see if you find something you don't like, because we have one giant barrier which students no longer have, the SAT, ACT. So once again, make them make it private. Let's talk scams now and frauds. I also have a video on this. It's about, I think it's 20 minutes long. It's 20 minutes long for a reason, by the way. We also have, if you want to read about scams and everything else, this is a great resource. Here we have the studentaid.gov/resources/scams. At the bottom there of the screen, you see the actual website, the link. This here is a website created by the U.S. Department of Education, and this site here is actually phenomenal. It talks about everything as far as frauds for loans, scholarship frauds, billing frauds. It talks about FAFSA frauds. It talks about everything fraud-wise and scams. It's a very good read. It's 20 minutes long. So if you're more visual, like some of us are, you can also go on our YouTube channel. We basically do the same thing in a video. Now, the biggest scam I saw this year was a fake email going around from a pretty prominent college in the tri-state area. I mean prominent, I mean it brings in a lot of students. That being said, the email was being sent out saying to all these parents, you have 48 hours to send us your bank information or else your student's going to get thrown out of the college. Now, I had about maybe 20 different families send me this, because I talk to thousands of families every year. Because I do 80 presentations. You can imagine how many families I see and talk to. So I had about 20 families forward me this email, and I knew, well, once I got to 20, I realized it was a scam. But when I read the first 2 lines, I already knew it was a scam because I've worked in college before for basically over almost 15 years. So I know how the billing offices work at every college. CUNY, SUNY, they all work the same, all the way up to Columbia, Harvard, etc. Colleges are not going to send you a random email saying, give us money or pay your bill. Colleges don't care if you pay your bill or not. This is what I mean by they don't care. Colleges are passive aggressive, which means they're not going to call you, they're not going to email you, they're not going to do anything if you don't pay your bill. What they do is send a list of named students to every professor of every class, typically around October 5th to the 10th, like let's say the second week of October. That list says the same thing at every college. Tell each one of these students in your class to please leave immediately and go talk to the financial aid office. And until you, the professor, gets another list from us, you are not allowed to let the student back in your class. Also, what will happen is they deactivate your room key, they deactivate your food key. So you can't go to your room, you can't eat, you can't do anything. That's how colleges do it as far as the billing. So they're not going to call you and say, pay us the bill or else. There is no else. Let's just say, okay, you can't do anything. So once I read that the college wanted bank round information, I knew it was a scam. But unfortunately, I'm pretty sure of the 20 people I told not to do anything, I'm pretty sure there was way more people that actually sent money out. And another big red flag for me was it was done on a Friday and it said you had 48 hours. And the reason they did that was because no colleges are open on Saturdays and Sundays. So they realized no one can get a hold of anybody and parents would probably get scared and just pay the bill. Or I guess give them the routing information and get scammed pretty much. So once again, just go on our YouTube channel to see the video or here, U.S. Department of Education, great resource. Now here's the second way you guys can find out if your colleges are generous or not. I call this the Cornell slide because I've been using Cornell now for 20 years for the slide. And once again, college does not matter which college I'm using. Now Cornell costs $79,443 a year to attend. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms. And the financial aid forms say you can pay $10,000. Subtract that out. That means you have $69,443 of financial need. That's what we need help from the college to help us pay for the college. Cornell meets 100% of need. So that means all $69,443 will be helped out by Cornell in grant money. Now, I know that because I've been doing the same slide for 20 plus years. You know that now because you've seen the slide here. But you would also know it, once again, going back to the College Board login, on the College Board site, collegeboard.org or collegeboard.com. They own both sites, but collegeboard.org is the default. On College Board, on the search bar I showed you guys before, if you type in any school's name, their profile pops up. Part of the profile has their financial aid component, how financially generous, I guess you can call it, the college is. And there's 3 numbers on that financial aid section. Number 1, how much this college gives in need. So Cornell obviously is 100% met need. Number 2, how much in gift aid this college gives out for that money. So how much of the money they're giving you is the free stuff, not just loans and work programs. And the third number, very easy to read, how much on average every freshman going to this university receives in general, the median number, which means 2 ways to find out if your colleges are generous. Number 1, do their net price calculators. Number 2, look up their profile, because once again, Cornell is just a school I'm using here, but Pace is very generous. Iona is very generous. Hofstra is very generous. Fairfield, Gettysburg, Muhlenberg, Bucknell, all extremely generous colleges. Johnson & Wales, URI. I can go on all day long telling you which colleges are generous, but if you go on to College Board and do the net price calculators, you would also know this. So what happens after we submit all the admissions paperwork, all the financial aid paperwork, and we get in? Very simple. You start receiving the financial aid award letters. The financial aid award letters are basically the starting point, essentially the key to starting negotiations. And your goal is to get these as soon as possible, because the sooner you get them, the more time you have to negotiate, i.e. appeal, ask for more money. On the award letters, they're going to show you the scholarships, the grants, the loans, and the work programs these schools are willing to offer you, or at least that school is willing to offer you. This begins the appeal process. And the appeal process works like this. In the world of college, by the way, there's 2 different appeals. This is what most people new to this don't understand, that when you appeal, you can appeal 2 different ways. Now, you can appeal the scholarship with the admissions office, which you always appeal. Or you can appeal the grant money with the financial aid office, which you do not always appeal. This is one of those weird things when I hear people say you always appeal. Once again, has never worked in a college. This is why you always appeal a scholarship, because the money is guaranteed. You're not going to lose it. The grant, you can lose it. I'll explain that in a moment. Let's first talk appealing the scholarship money. Let's say school A, where your student really wants to go, they've given your student a $10,000 scholarship. School B, let's say secondary choice, or maybe their safety school, has offered you a $20,000 scholarship. You go back to school A, say thank you for the $10,000, we appreciate it, dream school, it's where we want to go, et cetera, et cetera. However, we want to make you aware that school B here is offering us $20,000 in scholarships. Is there any way you can match the number? And you have, I don't say you have to, but you definitely need to say it that way. Is there any way you can match the number? Now, 3 things are going to happen through the admissions office. Number 1, they match the number, you're done. You got the 20 grand. Number 2, they come back and say, we can't give you 20, but we can meet you in the middle at 15,000. At which point you come back and say, thank you for the 15,000, but can we meet in the middle at 17.5? This is why you never start with a number. Third thing, nope, we're not going to negotiate. We're not going to appeal. We're not going to discuss it. We just don't do that things that way here, which does happen sometimes. 3 things happen if you appeal a grant through the financial aid office. Number 1, they give you more grant money. Number 2, they don't give you more grant money, which is also a good thing. Number 3, they take away some or all the grants you've been given. I've seen families have received 20, 25, even one family received $30,000 in grant money and elected to appeal to try to get an extra 1,000 or 2 and lost the entire $30,000 grant. What most people don't realize is this is the way the colleges do financial aid. I'll give you a quick little outline. You fill out your financial aid forms, it goes to a giant computer. That giant computer, within a 1/10 of a second, calculates all your numbers of what you should be paying towards college. What happens then is that information stays in that giant computer until the college uses their giant computer to pull in their financial aid forms because you put their names on your financial aid forms. They then pull in their information. They take that information and put it into another giant computer at the college or through a consulting company the college has hired to create all the award letters. Most machines will not pick up small nuances or small errors. A human being is brought in when you guys elect to appeal. When you say to the college, I want to negotiate my grant money, a human being steps in. And this is what makes it even more, I guess, advantageous or tricky scenario. The benefit of a human being is they can see if you have medical issues as far as medical bills, job loss, etc. They can also see if you forgot to put something on the form, which means when you do an appeal, they're going to ask for 19 taxes and 20 taxes. So they're going to have 2 tax years they're asking you for. If in either one of those years you had a capital gain and you forgot to put it on the form, red flag. If either one of those years you rented an apartment out, or you rented a building, or you rented a house, and it wasn't on 19, but it was on 20, now they know you have a rental, and you forgot to put it on the form, red flag. Interest, dividends, all these things, red flags across the board. So in a sense, you have to know what you're doing if you're doing an appeal. That's why we have a video, and it's 30 minutes long for a reason. That being said, for those who've been affected by COVID, if you have at least a 20% drop in your income, so let's just say you made $100,000 in 2019 and it dropped down to $80,000 or below $80,000 in 2020, I would almost across the board do an appeal asking for more grant money because of the drop in the income. But if you have certain assets that were shielded or hidden or did not see before, then I would be a little more cautious because you can easily get money as you can easily lose money when it comes to the grant money appealing that through the financial aid office. That being said, let's talk about the loans. There's 3 different types of loans, as I mentioned before. There are federal loans, state loans, and private loans. The federal loans, you're all going to get accustomed to hearing because the minute you guys fill out the FAFSA, your student is made eligible for a $5,500 federal direct loan in their name. The $5,500 federal direct loan is paid back by them 6 months after they graduate over a 10 to 20-year repayment. The second federal loan you're all going to get accustomed to hearing is called the PLUS loan, also known as the parent loan. The parent loan is essentially an additional loan you can take out. Of course, you have to fill out the FAFSA for as much as you want. So if you want to take out 50, 60, 70,000, take that all out in the PLUS loan. Problem is the loan is only in the parent's name. However, one thing I do like, it's got the lowest credit requirement. You can take out the loan roughly around a 610, 620 credit score. So if you had credit issues, it's probably one of the loans I'm looking for the earliest. Reasons I don't like the parent loan, however, though, it's got a 5.3% interest rate, which is very high for this environment. It's also got a 4.25% origination fee, which means you're paying $425 for every $10,000 you take out in fees for that 5.3% loan. Not so great. Second level loans are the state loans. Pretty much every state you guys are looking to go into, especially even outside New York, has state loans. New Jersey has state loans. Pennsylvania has state loans. Rhode Island has state loans. Connecticut has state loans. These loans, typically the rates range between the 3s and the 4.5 range. So they're a little bit better than the federal loans. Now, most of the time, you do not need to be a resident of these states to get these loans. You just have to have a student going to that state to be able to obtain these loans. Third level loans, which I like the most, are the private lenders. The Discover, the Citizens Bank, the Sallie Mae, etc. These are the best because they start their rates at 1.25%. There's no one better than the private lenders right now. The private lenders were the best last year, they're the best this year, and they'll be best for the next 2 years going forward because of the artificially low rate situation we find ourselves in because of the pandemic. Now, if you want loan help, if you need assistance with loans for senior parents or for parents who have college students already, you can just email me because I put together a list of the top 5 lenders every year in June. So basically, anyone who asks me, I just send you guys out, here are the top 5 lenders based on interest and terms, because I already put it together every June because everyone always asks me for it, because I know all the lenders because I go to all the same conferences as them. So I already know who's going to have the best rates every year. So if you want the loan list, just basically email me. I'll give you my email in about another slide or two. And then I'll just send it to you because every parent always wants help with the loan stuff. I just say, here are the top 5, just shop around. It's the easiest way to do it. That being said, we do have a newsletter that goes out every month. The newsletter talks about everything financial aid-wise, admissions-wise, testing-wise, everything you should be doing that specific month. If you want the newsletter, very simple. Just email us. I'll send you the newsletter. It goes out every month. I just need to know, if you do email me for the newsletter, which grade your student is in, because the newsletter is grade specific. That being said, here are the 3 levels of scholarship money. When it comes to scholarships, the number 1 level is the admissions office because that's the guaranteed 4-year money, as well as it's typically the biggest scholarship out there for you guys, so it provides the biggest bang for the buck. So once again, check with admissions. Is money available? If it is available, are we getting it? If we're not getting it, what can we do to get it? Second level of scholarship money is the private sources. FastWeb and FinAid are the 2 largest scholarship searches in the world. These are the 2 I like the most. I also like College Board and CapX. Those are like my top 4. FastWeb, FinAid, CapX, and College Board. All of these 4, specifically these 2, incorporate everybody. Scholarly, they incorporate Merit Aid, scholarships.com, every other one out there, Hunch, all the rest of them are all incorporated by these 2, okay? That being said, the third level, which has the least competition, is through the high school. I'll be checking with the guidance office to see if there's any local scholarships available for us here, attending basis here, the high school itself here, to see if there's anything available here, because typically the local scholarships have the least amount of competition. That being said, here are the resources. We have 2 slides to go, guys, and we're done. Here are the resources we talked about here tonight. FAFSA for the senior parents only. College Board for everyone. Senior parents, junior parents, and everyone in between can go on College Board. It's a great resource, great information. Scholarship searches, again, do not pay for scholarship searches. It's a waste of money. There are so many searches like these 2, the biggest, oldest in the world. They don't charge anything. Once again, we do have a YouTube channel. If you want more information, we're going to be posting this video as well. Just follow our YouTube channel. I post stuff on there typically once or twice a week. So a lot of the stuff you guys ask me, I'm posting up there all the time. As well as on our Facebook page. If you follow us there, you'll see what other colleges we're going to, what other high schools we're going to. Hopefully after, maybe in the spring, we'll be back in, I guess, in-person settings. So I'll be putting back on the Facebook page where we'll be going to. We also do post a lot of stuff about admissions and financial aid on our Facebook page too. And here is our contact information. If you have questions, if you have concerns, you can always call or email us. This is our contact information. The phone number on the slide is actually my cell phone number, which my wife thinks I'm completely out of my mind. And by the way, I go through my text messages first, then I go through my emails, then I go through my voicemail. I go through my text messages. Usually I'm about a day and a half behind. Now I'm probably gonna be 2 days behind my text messages. So let's just say 1 day behind on text messages. So if you need help, if you have a question, text me. Second, I check my emails. Third, I check my voicemail. I'm 1 day behind on text messages. I am 3 to 4 days behind on emails. I have not answered my phone since October 5th. And I'm not even joking. The only time I answer my phone is for my wife, or else she'll kill me because she's staring at me right now. Or the guidance office is when I know they're calling because I know their numbers in most cases. So, but if you have questions, just shoot me text messages. I'm just going through text nonstop all day long. Boom, 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 boom. I'm knocking like 25, 30 an hour. So it's the easiest way if you have any questions. That being said, I'd like to thank Matt for letting us, or letting me, do the presentation here.